I think we're live.
Hello. Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of Flare System Fireside Chat. I'm really happy that you're here, and I'm happy to have two well-known, excellent guests with me today. We want it to be a fireside chat, so we want that to be as much interactive as possible. So we highly encourage you to send your comments, your question, your thinking process in the chat, and I'll flip that over to our two guests. I need, without any further ado, I would like to present to you the two guests. I don't need any presentation anymore. I think they are well-known, famous one. But again, for those who didn't recognize the face, and we're happy to have Alex from VARS today with us, as well as David from UDM and also for Flare, commenting on the state of what is the role of the darknet in the threat landscape. It's my first time as host. I'll try to do my best, but also you can comment on my performance if you like in the chat. I'll be happy to read that as well. So today, since we're talking about the dark web and the threat landscape, I think the first question is we should start by defining like what is the dark web? What is your definition? Could you explain a little bit to make sure that we've seen the dark web having so multiple usage in the public space? So I think it's probably the best thing to start by asking you, what do you think of dark web? What is dark web for you?
Wanna go, Alex?
Yep. Go ahead.
You want me to go on it? All right.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Okay, let me start. Yeah, okay. So on my side, cybersecurity side and the SMB side of things, the value of it, clear web, dark web, is a lot of intelligence information there. I mean, when we started, it was also a nice place to find, cracks, hacks, and bad stuff that are like somehow borderline to explore. But now it's more like, in the threat landscape, it's a nice gathering of information. So people, they don't know like clear web, deep web, dark web, what's the difference between all of it. So I see it from a kind of an advanced user side of things. Well, you are the expert, David, on that. On my side, deep web, illegal stuff, thing you see underground, like torrent sites, download sites and illegal stuff that usually, a couple of years back then was more about crack software. Nowadays, it's more about malware repository. If you download something there, you're gonna be just bound. And then you get the dark web side of things, where it's a parallel economy. It's a new market, and it's actually pretty huge from what we see, and people don't realize that it's somehow an unrestricted, free-for-all market where you can basically buy and sell everything at your own risk. That's my take on it. And that's data, goods, and stuff. And you know what? I learned a lot and a lot of information from David reports on a regular basis, because he has a deep dive into that, and I'll let you just put your word on that.
Yeah, but I think one thing that we often forget is the dark web is not really a place where you can go. It's more of a communication channel that will get you to some information. So you mentioned, the markets, you mentioned the malware and drugs and all that stuff. But basically the dark web is just a way to anonymize who you are, and for the person that you want to communicate with to anonymize who they are. And there's multiple dark webs out there, and that's kind of one of the things that I find really interesting is, there's always the people talking about the, Freenet, I2P, even different protocols. But basically, I mean, the only one that really matters from all we've seen is really the Tor network, which is really the main one being used by about 2 million people every single day. And the other, for example, like Freenet is going to be really used by more child pornographers, and that's kind of a part of the dark web where at least I don't venture, and I don't think any of us kind of go there, just because just accessing the content can be quite illegal compared to the other stuff where we hang out. But basically, to me, the dark web is just a way to try and keep yourself anonymized. And here I think, and I'd be curious to hear your side on this, Alex, but, I think the emphasis is on try. I mean, we've heard so much about, does the dark web really provide you with any anonymity? How well does it protect you? We've seen the stories recently. I can't recall the name of the mobile phones that were supposedly secured, but actually they were being run by the FBI. And so you may think that you have anonymity and security online, and that is true to some extent, but that really protects you against, nation states, against, your other peers. But once you get into, protection against nation states, then this level of anonymity, then there's a lot more questions, and I don't think it protects you as much as some people would like, or I think.
I find that interesting because you're kind of talking about illicit communities and dark web and other type of dark web. Like, what is the relation between the two? Like, I mean, is everything on a dark web illicit? Is like illicit in communities and illicit activities take place outside? Could elaborate a little bit more? Like, what is the scope there?
I was about to jump on that because, we go from the dark side, illegal side, because we grab IOCs and intelligence from that. But the first, the origin of the network, and especially the Tor network, was to allow communication and safe communication against censorship, against, being shut down. And this is to protect free speech and journalism in foreign countries, allow them to communicate. So the initial goal of it was to actually protect communication for people that need that protection. So for sure, because it's supposed to be anonymity, all kind of parallel activity grew and it financed that stuff. But the main goal is actually allowing safe communication between authenticated parties. And as David was saying, everybody is not recognized. There is no signature. You have to trust who you told to. So you don't know who you told to unless you know who you told to. And so you need your own, authentication code to know who you talk to. So, because a lot of people say, hey, why don't we shut down that thing if it's only for negative stuff? But it's not only for that. It's just a channel, a tool, a communication tool. And we wanted to highlight the fact that there are many, many channels, as you said, and many networks that allow that communication. So speaking just of Tor and dark web side of things, it's just one of many channels, and shutting down that thing will not shut down crime. So,
and I mean, you mentioned that it was definitely a challenge in terms of like who you're speaking to and trusting issue into those ecosystem. But you're always mentioning and you keep repeating it, and I think it's really an important thing to mention. You talk about parallel economy, underground economy. So even if there's some challenge, there's still a way that it's structuring and it's organizing in some way. So could you quantify a little bit of the importance of that parallel economy and like comment a little bit on the sophistication, how they were able to achieve that parallel economy with the challenge that you expose?
Yeah, but I think it really depends on the type of illicit activity that you're looking at. In terms of hacking, in terms of financial fraud, we see a lot going on the dark web, but we actually see a lot even more happening, in other networks. And in terms of sophistication, I mean, it's the same pretty much everywhere I look on the internet. Most offenders are not going to be very skilled, and they're going to be dependent on a series of enablers, the people who actually code the malware. And, one day maybe we'll get a study on exactly, how many malware writers there actually are in the world. And we're talking about, medium to good quality malware. There can be all that many. I mean, we're still seeing the Zeus botnet being sold and advertised on the dark web, and it's been around for 12, 15 years now. So what we're seeing is there's a lot of enabling of activities and a lot of coverage. You're going to see online, you're going to see all these groups. I was just reading Creds on Security yesterday, and they were saying that, a skimming group managed to steal 1.2 billion, and that's with a B, dollars, from people just by skimming ATM machines. And when you read that, all of a sudden you're thinking, well, I can actually buy a skimmer online. I can get the software. Doesn't seem to be that difficult. Why am I not trying? And what we're seeing is kind of this portrait of, how easy financial crime can be and how easy hacking can be. And then when you actually start and sink your teeth into it, you realize, well, maybe it's not that easy. It's not for everyone. But it does attract a vast pool of people who either may be desperate or are thinking, I don't have anything to do right now. I don't have any served payments. What am I going to do with my life? Well, maybe I just, try this thing. But there is there is a clear hierarchy into the scene, if we can call it like that, where you have the masses who are really unskilled in using the tools developed by others, and then you have kind of a few elite people, and these people do get in touch with these masses. Why? Because it's a huge market and they want to make money, and it's pretty easy to sell these tools to these people.
I agree, and we are supposed to speak about the threat landscape on Canada side of things and market. And one of the report that you produced, David, that was a great highlight for me was the actual botnet market in Canada. I think that people don't realize, because you might think, oh, what's the threat to me? Is it why you speak about the threat landscape? Because it does nothing to me. But when I think about that report, so that report was overall market online. People were selling botnet access. So one of the chain in the pyramid of chain and services, somewhere infecting like computers, like home computers, company computers. Well, they were putting some backdoor on it and basically build a botnet of slave machines. And then the owner of the botnet would sell access to these machines to criminal through the marketplace. And this was like an enabler for bigger crimes. So that's actually a small one threat, but yet big enough. And it was astonishing because you did show up that there was an actual really well-organized crime organization on that side, where we had an actual shop with support center, call center. Like, people don't realize that, but the parallel market that we find on the dark web is well organized with excellent customer support when people actually buy that. So is it right to say that cryptocurrency is an enabler on payment on the dark web? Otherwise, how will we pay? That's one point.
Yeah,
David, you want to comment? Yep, sorry. Go ahead, David. Comment on the cryptocurrency things.
we talk a lot about the dark web, the illicit activities, but there's been some discussions recently about, what should we do with cryptocurrencies? And we're clearly not going to get rid of the dark web. We're not going to get rid of online offenders. So what do we do? And, one of the options that was raised recently is, do we ban cryptocurrencies because they are kind of the greatest facilitator for online crime? Things were so difficult. We used to have, companies that you had to go do a wire transfer. Some companies were fined because they were complicit in this sending of money. But now things have become so easy, and we would not have the ransomware problem that we're seeing today were it not for these cryptocurrencies. And even then, I mean, the Bitcoin remains, at the core of everything. And are we going to ban cryptocurrencies now that, Wall Street has gotten in and it's become so huge? I don't see it happening, but it is true that no one could have foreseen, and I'm sure that Satoshi Nakamoto didn't kind of realize this, was that, his invention was going to be used for this. It did a lot of good, but it's also fueling kind of all of this illicit economy that could not exist without that.
All right, we shed some light on some like things that happened on the dark web in the illicit communities, but I think the question here really is how we can use it to protect companies, to protect people's data. And I think, yes, there's different methods and approach and behavior that we see in the dark web, but how we can transfer that know-how and that knowledge into actionable data to do good and to protect the company, because it's tough, like, to do sometimes you have the information, but how you use it wisely, because it's not, you won't ask the bad guy or the cyber criminals to give you all the details. You won't buy the method. So, I mean, how can you do something clever with the information out there?
So maybe I can jump at the first stuff, because that's my small use of it at VARS, where I take value from the solution, digging data on the dark web. What am I looking at? And this is clear that this is sadly an extreme and too late step, because this is a corrective measure. I'm looking for leaked data. I'm looking for a credential of customer organization and actually their digital footprint on the dark web to know what's out. So basically what I found there is a proof of a failure of a cybersecurity posture. So it's sad, but it's needed, because either you have an incident and you want to know how it came in or what was the impact. And there is also something that we watch, and I watch on the dark web side of things, is the data life cycle. Because you spoke about ransomware, and ransomware is also about exfiltration of data. And I've seen overall over the years like a life cycle of a year of the stolen data. It's first stolen, then there is a blackmail about the release, then there is a leak site, and people pay, disappear. But then eventually, like 12 months after, on average, this is what I saw on my side, data eventually pops out, and you learn about the leak anyhow. So that's an interesting thing that I see on my side. And I know, you fight more on the money laundering and banking stuff maybe and stuff like that, more proactively. On my side, because I work with SMBs, like small, medium businesses, the value I have for them is like, look, this is what I have of you on the dark web, and this is how it may have come online, and this is how it could be a threat. You have scam campaigns, and the fact that you index dark web and deep web and even sometimes clear web stuff, we get information about this company that's referred online in GitHub or whatever that are clearly part of a scamming campaign or spamming campaigns. So when we find that information, we can share this intelligence with organizations and say, hey, look, you might be a target of that campaign because your information appeared there and there and there. So that's my added value. And it allows to build a threat modeling for the customer from existing information, critical information like credential, and then it allows to build a better security posture. But there is much more than that you do, David. I don't know how far you can dig into what you do on the investigation, because I will not see, I don't go in the market, I don't see what's on sale, what product are on sale, what's the scale of an actual scam going on. I mean, Botnet to me are a scam as well. So I don't see the extent of that, but you see it because you actually go in the market. I get just the high level intelligence on that.
Yeah, and there's so many levels that you can look at this problem from. I mean, a lot of companies, they're really interested with the tactical, like, is there a computer in my network that is compromised? If so, which computer, how did they get in, and how can I stop it? And very often this level of information is difficult to get from the dark web. We showed, you mentioned our Botnet report on Canada. It was pretty interesting that you actually get, the partial IP addresses of the computers that have been infected, in which country they are, and you can actually look at all the accounts that are for sale from that computer. So using all this information, you actually get some pretty specific information and know if one of your computers has been infected. So there are possibilities to get this tactical, extremely specific information about your company. And one of the things that we've tried to build or try to create is more high-level strategical level information, where you can actually see which industries are being targeted by whom, how much are they being targeted. And I think this is something that's extremely useful. We see malicious actors talking with each other, and they find a website that they can abuse. Well, it starts one day with one person abusing it, the next day it's 2, the next day it's 4. And so what you're seeing is, being able to detect these trends and understand, is the travel industry being targeted? At some of the points, it's going to be the retail, it's going to be the hotels. And it's pretty interesting to kind of map out this information. And if you're aware of this, you can actually predict, am I going to be facing a lot of malicious actors in the coming days and weeks? And that's something that I think that we should pay more attention to, in addition, of course, to all of the tactical information you can get. But that is something that's pretty valuable that we've seen in the past.
There's a good question in the chat that I'm going to just switch it directly to it. So we talk about like dark web in the trend landscape, but if dark web is such a great place for criminals, how comes many fraud platform and marketplace and cybercrime happens on clear web, like in channels such as Telegram, ICQ, like clear website? Could you comment on that? Like, is there what is the scope of dark web? What is outside of that? Where is it? Why it's working?
I can jump on the first aspect of that. 2 things. Hide in plain sight. First of all, if you hide your activities in a regular platform, you are less likely to be caught. You have all the intelligence and security. But the other point is, if you want to reach your target and you are an attacker, you need to be on the platform where the victim is located. Otherwise, you will not reach it. You got entry path and way to reach out, and that's one of the things. I see the question speak about Telegram, ICQ. It's not the same like ICQ and Telegram. Telegram is offering full encryption on message, and it has been used in command and control servers, for botnets. And the thing of that, it's that the Telegram protocol is not blocked in company networks. Most of the time, this is something that is allowed because it's assumed to be safe, while Tor network, dark web stuff, will be blocked. So that's one of the things from a security standpoint that I see. And then the second thing is that advanced threat groups also hide the communication channel in regular application, game apps that are looking like real apps and games on the App Store and stuff. And they use these as communication channel as well. It's very, very spread, and it's not only focused on the Tor network. I'm going to let David deep more into that.
But I think there's also a very strong sense of impunity among all of the malicious actors. All offenders, offline, online, think they're never going to get caught. That's kind of how they think. And they wouldn't be in this business if they thought that they would get caught. So basically, there's this sense of impunity that people are going to have. And when you're looking at the track record in most countries, what you see is that law enforcement is just overwhelmed by the number of malicious actors there are out there. Malicious actors that can be from Canada, from Russia, Ukraine, from whatever country. It becomes an incredibly difficult problem to solve. And in this case, it means that law enforcement, even though they're investing more and more resources, it's an uphill battle for them to be fighting these online malicious actors. And so if they go on the internet, well, first of all, it may be due because they have this sense of impunity and they say, who cares? When are they going to catch me? Maybe 5 years from now, I'm not going to be around anymore. So I think that explains parts of it. And the other thing is for anyone who's ever mentioned the dark web or Tor network to anyone in their family or relative, everyone is a bit scared, doesn't know how to get on it. Once you get on it, it's so easy to browse around, to get around and to learn stuff. But people are maybe not so inclined to go on the dark web. And so when you're offering these ClearNet platforms, people that are, everyone is, familiar with Telegram. ICQ, you have to be as old as me to be familiar with it. But even on the internet, everyone can access a website. And I'm sensing that if law enforcement was to find the resources and be able to really target these platforms, we would see a lot of people moving outside of the clear web and onto other platforms. And maybe the last thing is, when you're looking at Telegram or ICQ, to me, it's exactly like the dark web. They're not going to share any information about their users with Canadian law enforcement. We're not going to be able to track them because they're going to be from Russia. And so at this point, whether you're using the dark web or Telegram, I think you get kind of the same level of security, no matter what platform you're using. That's why they're there, basically.
If I'm understanding correctly, David, one point that you're bringing on is even though it's on the clear web, at some point it's more like a political problem, having the right agreement in place to do the takedown of those websites. And sometimes even though it's on clear web, if you don't have the relationship with where it's hosted, you're basically not able to do anything, right?
Yeah, and it, takedown, we may think that's a very simple problem, but then are you taking down, a domain name, a server? If you're shutting down the server, we've seen countless times how you shut down a server, but there were a lot of legitimate, websites being hosted on that server. It's an incredibly difficult problem. Just taking down a website is not something that's easy. And we've seen private companies, we've seen judges being very careful when taking down these websites. And I fully understand why. And that's in the best cases when you actually get a reply, when very often you're actually just not getting a reply. So, moving forward and kind of trying to, put out kind of policies or, what do we do? I think it's a question of targeting groups and being able to take them down. So not trying to shut down all of the online illicit economy, that's never going to happen, but showing people that you're going to be targeting groups and you're going to be successful in it, and showing that not anyone can hide is basically what you want to do. And that's what we've kind of seen with the FBI and the American law enforcement. It took them 3 years almost to shut down Silk Road, about a decade ago, but they actually did it. It must have cost them millions of dollars, thousands of man hours, but they still did it. And the message I wanted to send was, you cannot hide from us on the dark web. And that could explain why people are moving to Telegram.
Mm-hmm. Is it because of scope of the problem? Because right now we're seeing a lot of a ransomware group being either taken down by the law enforcement, or they just quit business because it's starting to be a little bit too hot. Is it like, why did it take 5 years to get to that point?
I think we're still going to be talking about ransomware 5 years from now. Yeah. I don't know, Alex, if you see anything in the horizon telling you that this is going to stop, but
no, the thing is, it's democratizing, sadly. It was highly specialized, sometimes a state-backed actor to gather intelligence, but what we see now is ransomware as a service did lead to fork of malware code, and this is reused by different groups and smaller groups. And what we see sadly is that what were script kiddies before, like using existing exploit, now it's coming to ransomware. Like anyone almost can launch a ransomware. So most of them are going to get caught, thankfully, because they don't know how to hide their track. The typical and most difficult thing in that is the money laundering. When you get the money, this is tracked. So to escape that, they're going to fall. But the issue is that bad thing will have been done and business will suffer. So sadly, it's a prevention that must be done at the business level, because we will only play catch up on the criminal ground side of things. So it's a great intelligence. It's great to try to understand the alliance, the move between countries, what's a state-backed actor, what's an actual private group, what are mercenaries and that stuff. But otherwise, the prevention will need to be considered much more than it is now. I'm on the prevention side as well. And, right now, people still think, I'm not going to get affected by that. But thing is that the threat landscape is growing extremely fast. Dark web, side channel, Telegram chat, and we cannot shut that down. I was on a panel a couple of days ago, just a quick one, with Interpol. And, they face this challenge to identify and spot the perpetrator of the crime. And obviously, on their side, they would love to have a backdoor in the encryption side of things, which I'm personally against. I like what the FBI did with the encrypted chat network. They did release the tool by themselves, and they had an encryption key, and they could read everything. So it was not a backdoor in the protocol. It was, they did put the tool on the market, and the criminal just hooked on it, and they got caught. So that was an amazing move, because that was respecting privacy. People looking to do bad things get caught, and that's a great approach, I think. Now, Interpol see a lot of human crimes as well, financed by all of that. And if we can connect the dot, between ransomware and ransom payment and crime, I shared about that. And I guess you see the money move on dark web, and when you follow the blockchain moves, this is financing transnational criminal organization. So a small threat that we see, like botnets, that looks like, it's not a big deal after all. It allows to spread targeted attacks on different countries. And then the money you get out of the ransom or whatever intelligence you get is financing more and more up to human trafficking. And this is, you see, when you spoke about sites we don't want to see on the dark web, like the human trafficking one, I saw, when I was doing search on intelligence for customers as well, I felt on some site that even the front picture was just unsustainable to see. So when I see that, I report that to the human trafficking at the FBI. But it's a challenge, because there is sometimes no legal ground, as you said, if these sites are hosted in a country that do not collaborate. So our action, gathering intelligence, doing prevention, and taking all the intelligence we can get from what we can see on the dark web is really critical, because we can slow down that process and maybe, just shut it down through parasiting it. Because I don't think we can actually shut it down with a one-time action. Otherwise, it's going to just be reborn from the ashes.
I'm going to do a segue in what you're saying. I'm going to use that as a segue to get to another question. You were talking more about business, like securing the company, and my question is, dark web monitoring, cyber threat intelligence monitoring. We know there's no one silver bullet in cybersecurity, but you kind of need to have different layers, and you need to build a strategy. What is the importance of cyber threat monitoring and how it could be efficient and efficiently integrated in a strong cybersecurity strategy? The important and the efficiency. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really tells you where the threats are coming from, who the threat actors are, and how they're going to attack you. And I think to me, it's essential because there are so many things you need to protect against. I mean, you need to protect your printers. You need to protect, again, spam and phishing. You need to protect against people coming into your building, with USB keys, plugging them into your servers. I mean, the list of threats vectors is just endless. And at some point, no company can do everything or anything. And so by really using cyber threat intelligence to understand who the bad guys are, what are they doing now? Because there's trends in there as well. I mean, people are going to be using spam, then they're not going to be using spam. They're going to be doing ransomware as a service. So you need to be actually in tune with this criminal underground to effectively protect yourself. And when you have a limited budget in terms of security, and who doesn't, well, you need to have priorities. You need to make sure that you cover your bases. And that is really where I think cyber threat intelligence shines, is to tell you, so right now, this is what we need to look at. And we're not going to catch 100%, but we're actually going to catch most of the attacks if we go down that path.
Okay. And Alex, if before we go in, how do you think you will integrate that know-how and that knowledge coming from cyber threats with other cybersecurity system in place to be more efficient? Like, how you could efficiently integrate that knowledge with other system in place, other strategies?
Well, you have two things. You have the automation side, where you can bring intelligence in your threat monitoring system, and it's going to get more IOC and trends, so your system is going to be fed by these intelligence things and be able to catch the thing. But also, as David was saying, it's all about knowing what's targeting your verticals. If you have threat actor targeting you, and you saw the MITRE ATT&CK framework is helping in that identifying the APT groups. So the same thing that you can find on the dark web as a trend, and it's coming to you, then you can actually even process with awareness training to your employee. Because if some kind of cyber threat is growing in your field, then you can be proactive and defend that. Because sometimes the defense is not a technology solution. It's part of it, but you cannot fix everything with technology. So you need the people side of things and processes to be adjusted to that. So there is some part of automation, feed the threat intelligence in the system, but also feed the intelligence of people so they know how to defend against the coming threats. And this is my fight on LinkedIn. I share a lot about what's going on, so they know that's a thing. Because like the Botnet thing, which I really love to see, people do not know that's a thing. They don't know that the botnet can hide on their machine and steal every account they are connected to, because they are not used to close their session. Usually for best practice, you log in somewhere and then you log out. And they don't know that, so they leave everything connected. And if you have a botnet on your machine, this threat actor have access to all of this. So this thing, you only learn from the threat intelligence because you see it happening. So that's where the added value is to me.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Really interesting. David, do you want to jump on to jump? We are close to time right now, but I still got some question on my side. I still see some. I think we can carry on for maybe another 5 minutes. So, David, do you want to kind of comment a little bit as well on that?
And if I piggyback on what you were saying, what you've been saying throughout this is, I think having access to this intelligence is the first thing, but making sure the right person has access to it is kind of the other challenge. I know you mentioned sharing some tips with the FBI, sharing tips with partners, and ensuring that everyone knows what they're supposed to know or what they could know in this optimal scenario. I think it's still a huge challenge, and making sure that people realize what you're saying to them. So, for example, in your human trafficking case, if you see something, with actually, telephone numbers, email addresses, something you can actually use to do an investigation, you want to make sure that the FBI, when they get your tip, they actually see this information and they know that they can actually start a case. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with companies. I mean, you have to make sure that they're aware and they have all the right intelligence. The right people in these organizations are aware of this information, and they can actually put in place the preventive measures to prevent any attack, basically. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's still...
Sorry, go ahead, David.
It's still a challenge. People want to keep everything private. People are worried about the consequences of sharing, and there are clear legal challenges to sharing information between organizations, even with the police, and you can get sued for that. So it's basically something that we need to figure out is, the malicious actors, they don't have to work under those rules, and they can actually share everything they know. Whereas on our side, we're kind of stuck into, well, I know about this attack that's upcoming, but I can't really tell anyone. Or, I know how this happened, but I can't tell anyone. I think this is something that we need to work on, and we need to have more organizations that facilitate this kind of sharing of intelligence between all the parties.
That was exactly what I was trying to go with the question as well, David. When I jumped in, clearly there's a need for more collaboration between the private and the public sector as well, and between the different ecosystem that are trying to fight financial crime and cybercrime. There's definitely some challenges to expose. What are the solution paths? Like, what are the concrete example of how we can make things work, and how we can start maybe simple and grow from there? Like, there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of sharing network, the FSI's Act, those type of sharing network. How is there a way we can be more than just verbal or written information sharing and be a little bit more automated, if I'm going back to the point of Alex?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming, private public sector, especially in the state, have been a great discussion lately, trying to get a safety net of communication and intelligence sharing. Because what David was saying is right. I mean, we've seen so many, white hat people reporting vulnerability bugs, and you got sued by the company because they have been saying, you tried to break into our system. It was not the case. So it's the same thing with threat intelligence. When you see an amount of leaked credential, the fact that you saw them and you access them can be a crime from a standpoint. So you need to have a trusted network, a trusted way to report. And on the vulnerability side, it was in the form of bug bounty programs, security bounty. But we need something more advanced and more formalized between law enforcement, private public sector. And when we say public sector, it's the law enforcement, but also the public organization, government, industrial sector, that needs to be collaborating on that side. But at the same time, because I see big tech player use that reason to invite privacy as well. And I don't want that to be a reason to invite privacy. I don't want to reach a point when we have a backdoor in encryption. We still need privacy, but we should be able, if we see something, to say something. And that will help. I mean, what will be the point for, suing someone that report an issue because the person will not gain anything from that. Unless he tries to blackmail, but then you get to prove that this is a bad intention. But if it's a good intention about just sharing awareness and getting the things fixed, then there should not be any retaliation possible on that side of things. Right now, you're right. I think a lot of people are scared of reporting anything because it can backfire. And that's a complex topic because the legal ground is depending on borders, on countries. And dark web, net, internet, threat intelligence has no borders. So, even if you match a legislation on reporting in a country, you might break the law in another country. So, we need the common ground on that. And it's very, very complex, and it should start on the tech side of things and maybe be accepted officially by the different government as a unified platform or process to communicate on that topics.
And on my end, I think it's all about the attitude that we have towards cybersecurity. I think it needs to be on the forefront of CEOs of companies and on the forefront of everything that companies do. I mean, you look at the efforts that companies are going to put into their physical security, and they would never, let a door open. They would never kind of let these huge gaps into their physical security. But as soon as you get into, cybersecurity, then there's not this urgency of fixing things. And, we can debate as to, if this comparison is really perfect. But I think it's all about kind of our mindset when we think about cybersecurity. Is it a cost, or is it something that is going to be essential for our business? Is this something that we need to think first and foremost before we think about anything else? And as long as it's going to be more seen as a cost rather than something that we actually need and need to think about, cybersecurity is never going to work. And, as soon as you think about it as something that you need and you need to think about, I think all the pieces are going to fall in place pretty easily, but we need to change how we think about and how we see cybersecurity.
All right, David, I think we got the topic for our next Fireside Chat about how we can switch cybersecurity to be a competitive advantage instead of being an expense for a company. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going that path, and I think it's for the best, definitely. But definitely another good discussion topic on that. Alex, David, thank you very much for your time. Really, thank you really much for your insight. I had a blast doing that Fireside Chat with you, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Talk to you soon.
Perfect. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.